Part of teacher's training and part of your training as a human being, human means light of your mind, is to see how can I serve. How can I serve first the God within myself? Because we can only serve as much as we can love ourselves. Because otherwise you're stuck on the me, and the me gets really big and gets complicated and gets bigger than everyone else if you haven't found the peace and the self-love. That's why yesterday, for instance, I did that, starting to clear that first breath of your life. Because that's really, really important.
And she lived in the 13th century. Her name was Lala. And she was a renunciate, and she was an enlightened being. Most people don't know about her because she was, do you know about her? Because she was considered raging mad. She was almost like St. Francis of Assisi. You know, they thought he was mad. And that's what they called in those days, like crazy. Because he could make 1 million fish come out of the waters. He did all kinds of acts, and he was in the king's court as the jester, or as the king would have his wise men, but they were only intellectuals. So they were never really able to give the truth, only intellectual knowledge of what they had learned from someone else. But when he wanted to know the depth of the truth, he would always go to St. Francis. And it was the same way with Lala. She wasn't in anybody's court, but she lived in northern India. And she's known to have just danced and danced and danced, and many times with no clothes on. She would just come through villages and dancing, and she, of course, they thought was mad. So I was in Portland, Oregon years ago, and there's a very famous bookstore there. I can't remember. What is it?
Powell's?
No. Banyan? No. There's always a famous bookstore in each town. Where's Banyan?
In Vancouver.
Vancouver. Bodhi trees in LA. Anyway, it was a house with so many books, you know, those kind of magical places. And when you're really a seeker, you're just, okay, God, give me the book. Well, her book fell out on my foot, and I had no idea who she was. It was a skinny little book. And I picked it up, and I cherished that book because I felt so mad myself for so long. And I lived in Hawaii in the madness of almost Lala, actually. And when I read it, I was like, yes. But then, as time went on, I lost the book. It just fell away. It had ported. And so I hadn't read any, and I asked so many people, did you know Lala? Do you know Lala's work? And nobody knew. And then I opened this book, and here's Lala, right here. So I thought that I would just read it. This was Lala. It's L-A-L-L-A. It's 2 L's in the middle. So backwards, it almost be the same thing. Allah, Allah, Lala. She says, listen to this. This is really good. Because she didn't eat and she didn't drink. I mean, she did, but not like we do. And she just danced all the time because she was always in a state of ecstasy. And she didn't take drugs either. If you live on the breath, you won't be tortured by hunger and thirst or the longing to touch. The purpose of being born is fulfilled in the state between I am and that. That's like I am and that. It's basically the space between your inhale and your exhale. And I just felt so fulfilled. If you live on the breath, you won't be tortured by hunger and thirst or the longing to touch. The purpose of being born is fulfilled in the state between I am and that. That's why we do so many meditations with I am, I am, I am. When we were in India, this last trip where we were doing level 2, Anand, who's our most beloved, youngest and wisest astrologer I've ever met, he's only 27, and we always ask him to come forward and speak at one of our sessions. And because he's traveled in the West a lot, has he come here yet?
Yes.
Okay. He knows the language and the ways of the Western people, but he was born and raised on the banks of the Ganga with yogis. And he's very educated, very beautiful soul. And he said, in America, they always ask you, how you doing? How you doing? No one asks, how are you? It's always got to be qualified with what you're doing to qualify you as a human being. And then Lala says it again, the space between I am and that. So when people ask you, or perhaps as you greet people, well, Sat Nam is really a greeting, like truth is my name. You're not asking them their occupation, what kind of car they drive, what they do for a living. You just say, truth is my name, and then they answer back, truth is my name. And then they might say, Waheguru, and then you say, Waheguru, like, wow, I'm going from darkness to light. What a great way to greet people. Like in India, when you greet, if you don't know that, you usually say namaste. You don't say, hey, how's it going, man? Well, I'm getting by. People have the most strange ways we talk to each other. Jesus Christ, what a day. Yeah, I know what you mean, man. It was really and you go on and on about everything. Instead of namaste or peace be with you. In India, as many of you know, it's so often you're greeted with just this. I mean, it's so wonderful when someone is approaching you and you're approaching them, you just go like that. You don't need to say any words. You say, my heart is your heart. I'm one with you. And when we come back from India, we are so used to this that we, and then, you're going through security. Well, they don't quite get that. But it's like, it is true. How we greet is our presence. And Yogi Bhajan would always say that our presence got to speak louder than our words. And did you tell the story, honey, of Susie Sab's mother? You did tell it already? Do you all know it?
Was his grandmother?
About his grandmother?
Yeah.
She broke up the fight.
Her presence.
What?
Her presence
Yeah.
quieted the fighting.
Yeah, and that your presence, and especially for a woman, not to dishonor men, but, well, we have a little more power than you do. I don't know, do you know that? We have more power than men do. But it's been but it's complementary. I mean, it's to your advantage that we have more power, and it would really allow you to relax a lot more and not have to roll up your sleeves anymore, because we're here to take care of you, because we have intuition 16 times more than you have. So if you're wise, you'll ask a woman what to do. Not some emotional roller coaster nutcase woman who doesn't know that her intuition is her most powerful thing, and come to cultivate it, develop it, and trust it. Then a wise, that saying that every great man behind a great man is a woman.
Better woman.
Yeah. But it doesn't mean like we're better. It means we're complementary. You wouldn't sit around and argue if the moon's better than the sun, would you? I like the moon better. I don't like the sun. I think the sun should go away. Well, then I don't want the moon. No, they're complementary. And that's, well, women are the moon, men are the sun. We're a reflection. So, if a woman, that's why I told you that yesterday, how Yogi Bhajan had ladies camp from about 1977. This still goes on, but not the power that when he was there. And we used to go to New Mexico for 8 weeks. He said, leave your family. We bring our kids with us if they were small. If they were older, they'd go to the upper land and have their own camp. The men just stay home and work, he said. And that we go and we develop this intuitive self, this bigger self than we had ever been told that we are. Because he knew that if you developed a woman to who she was, that intuitive, vibratory sensation, knows the truth person, and clears all the emotional debris and all the blocks in our psyche of our greatness, then we would go home and change the whole unit at home, because we're the hearth. Is that the word, hearth? We're the fire. We're the home or the hub. And then on a small scale, then we would take it bigger, 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 until it becomes global, until we have healed the whole world. Because if a woman takes her power, her intuitive, nurturing power, she can never, ever birth a human being that wants to pick up a gun, that wants to kill. That solution is killing, fighting, arguing. Because they will raise their consciousness through the mother, through those 9 months. And so that was his prayer. He didn't realize how much work he had to do with this. I think it blew his mind how primitive we were in our training as a woman, because how could we know anything? Our mothers didn't know that. We grew up in a time where we were fighting for women's rights. We had to fight to not be burned at the stake for wanting to deliver babies. That's what the Crucible, that play was all about with Mary Warren. Back in Massachusetts, she was burnt at the stake. Burned alive for wanting to birth babies at home. That protected the male doctors. And it went on and on like that, because no one knew their rightful place in the universe. So he got called to the West, and he said, educate them, inspire them, teach them a technology that the women can come to know who they are, because once they know it, the men will fall right into place. And that's how it works. That's why you see here many, many more women taking teachers training, engaging in Kundalini. But what's beautiful about you men is you have to be very sensitive and very evolved, otherwise you wouldn't be here. You'd be at another form of yoga. The yoga. Which is okay. There's nothing wrong with it. But so give yourself a lot of credit as men, because you have the ability to plug into the intuitive moon side of you and come also to heal your relationship with any woman. It probably goes back to your mother when you were in utero. It has nothing to do with sex preference, though. If you're gay, if you're not, that's not it. This is bigger. Like yesterday when we were doing that breath work, taking us back, what were you healing? You really were not healing your ego birth. You were healing your etheric soul birth. So you could detach from that which happened to you your whole 9 months in your mother's womb. Because that is an earth birth, and we all had earth births because we're in earthling bodies. But we try to heal it by going to therapy for years in, years out. And I did it. I went thinking, if I just get back to the basis, to the root of why I'm so insane, I'll get to it, and then I'll say, oh, that was it. It was because my mother and my father, and then it's gone. I got to so many roots, but it didn't go. Because I was dealing with my ego. That's why Yogi Bhajan has one phrase that he uses in a CD someplace. He says, therapy will not work in the long run. Now, I'm not saying at first it won't, just like meds might be a stop. You might need those. And I'm not saying to throw out your therapy, or if you're a therapist, to not throw it out, no. But the ultimate soul healing is another level than what your mind knows. And that's what we did yesterday. We went into the soul birth through that breath and through what we did. And that's the truth of your birth. The other birth is the earthling body, which you've been in 3.4 million lifetimes. No, billion, million what? He's sleeping. 8.4 million lifetimes we've been here. So can you imagine all the births you've been in? I mean, just imagine. Anything. That's why one time Oprah had a TV show and she says, I brought these psychics on. And I love Oprah. But she's kind of, I mean, she really is helping so much. It's unbelievable. Making people aware of so much more going on than just this earthly plane. She brought 2 or 3 psychics on. It was when psychic stuff was really hot, like 10, 15 years ago. And these people were, they'd bring someone on stage and then she'd look at them and tell them what they had been in, like their last lifetime or 2 lifetimes. I'm going, oh, geez, you know. We've been here 8.4 million. Anything you've ever imagined you've been. You've been. And you couldn't even imagine 8.4 million. Everybody who you have, you see, you've been with them. Everybody in this room, we've been with each other. We could have even been married, and that's why we get so screwed up in marriage, because we run towards somebody and we go, oh, but they might have been our father, or our brother, or our mother. And then we marry him and we go, oh, geez, what happened? I married my mother. So, no one can know hardly anything except that space between I am and that. And that's what makes Kundalini Yoga so magical, because that's the space you go into. And it's such a fun trip, and it never ends. You don't get to a place, okay, I've done it all, okay, now I've got to do something else. It goes on and on and on. One thing I do want to, I don't want to use the word caution, but I was reading another spiritual person that I love a lot, and she said that she lives in Scotland. And she said, I was working with somebody who came, and they were trying to jam. They were on an express track for enlightenment. They were taking everything they could take. They were engaged in Reiki. They were going for their level 3. They were doing a yoga teacher's training. They were doing psychic work. They were doing nutrition. They were doing everything, and they cracked. So what I'm saying to you all, don't try to get all this. In other words, if you're doing Kundalini teacher's training now, do it. But don't sign up for another kind of training and another kind of psychic development and a nutrition 2-hour. Don't go on and on and on like more is better, because it's not. Use your quality of your life rather than quantity. Just because you read X amount of books, it's not going to mean you're enlightened. In fact, you could be further from enlightenment because you let the old intellect take over. When we teach pregnancy teachers training, of which I'm teaching, and I didn't bring any brochures, but in February we're doing a 6-day training in Los Angeles, and it's under the auspices of Kundalini Yoga and Yogi Bhajan. It's called Khalsa Way, which means the pure way. Some of you have taken it, and it's really, really good. Even if you've never had a baby, if you not even sure you want to teach like a lot of people here, what you do, you rebirth your own self. What you got an instance of yesterday, you know, right? That started her. But what was I going to say? Let's see. Okay. Sometimes people will come, and I remember I was attending a birth several years ago, at the hospital, and she had read 27 books on pregnancy. And she was pregnant, so she thought more is better, all that intellectual knowledge. When it came to her labor, she could not, because she had every book flying through her head. Well, it says at 3 centimeters, then the contraction should last 3.5, but the other book said, and I don't know what's going on because the books aren't matching up to my experience, and it was like insane. So insane. And that's why I say, be careful what you read, because not everything is truth. And some of it can really, you get too many esoteric, too many, it can really take you out. It's like watching too many movies that are not good. You can fill your psyche up with lots of stuff. So pick and choose. It's like food you eat. Pick and choose the food you eat. Pick and choose your friends you're with. People say, well, my friends are falling off because I'm changing. I said, that's okay. Like will find like. And they will stay together, and then maybe out of them, they're in a little cluster, and you made an agreement that you were the cornerstone, and that you would bring this cluster along. You'd all reincarnate back at the same time. Maybe your own immediate family, your mother, your father, brothers and sisters, or you might have just a group, and that you were chosen to be the forerunner. You would carry the torch of truth, and they would watch you. And some would want to turn on you, like they turned on Jesus. Some would want to slander you. Some may even want to destroy you, but many of them will want to follow you. But they're going to watch to see if it's safe, if it's a good idea. They're going to watch and see. If you say you're a vegetarian, they're going to watch. If you're enrolled in this teacher, they're going to watch you and see if it's a good thing. So don't try to persuade anyone, get on a bandwagon. Just let your presence. And stick with each other in these next months, because you're going to have a lot to share. And your level of consciousness is going to go up and up. And when you meet each other at Whole Foods, you're going to hug each other proudly, because you're going to feel like, wow. Like, wow. And don't feel too isolated. Keep in contact. We're going to break up in Jetta groups, so you'll have your own little group. And also, to not go back home, especially those who are holding the space for you, if you have family and children, or holding whatever space, and don't go on and on about you. This is my speech after India. Don't go back and say, oh, I had the most wonderful weekend. We were in this beautiful place called Star House, and the sky, and the food was good, and the people were so nice. It's the most wonderful thing I've ever done. And they're changing a kid's diapers or cleaning the refrigerator or whatever. That is not appropriate. The first thing you do is you buy them a present. If you're out of town or whatever, you gift them, and you don't talk. You let your presence speak louder, and you say, thank you so much for holding the space for me. Thank you so much. It means a lot to me. How was your weekend, dear? How is everything? On them. Hug them. And then little by little, they'll ask, well, what did you do? And they'll say, well, we got up the first day, and then you go on for an hour. No. You should say, well, it was really wonderful, and pick a highlight. I enjoyed getting up in the morning, but don't threaten them either. Or I learned one thing, that in relationships it's really good to, and say something. Play your cards right. Don't be some show-off, ego-y person, because that's not what a Kundalini teacher is. That's not why you're here. You're here to help serve others.